Okay, quickly on the 80s. Back to black. That's funny. Like black set of mine, I meant. Okay. Anyhow, in the previous episode, little feedback. In the 1960s, tremendous attempts were made to improve people's rights. Black got a little recognized. Women also got a little recognition. Indians started to ask for their identity back. Gay people got less bashed for no reason. The Democrats really tried to settle their welfare states, showing that, well, there were differences between being willing to do things and having the possibility to do things. It actually goes back to the idea of predestination, the Protestant faith, but let's not talk about the 17th century, but moving on the 70s. Um, the welfare state did not take in the US because of the many wars fought abroad. After the Korean War, there was the Vietnam War, and after the Vietnam War, the American involvement in the Arab-Israeli conflict with the USSR led to tremendous international crisis that did not kill people per se, but that drove them into the ground. It was an economic war. So people lost their jobs, their homes, and it felt a bit like the 30s all over again. The first oil crisis was followed by a second oil crisis and an Islamic revolution that made the US wish for isolationism once again. And also it proved that the first economic power could be shattered because of globalization and interdependency. What you need to understand is that since the wreckage of the Lusitania in 1915, the US felt as if they were the world's police. By the way, there is a little movie about that called America World Police. It's awesome. Anyway, they saved Europe once again. They saw the world um, as a puppet like board game, as they were the puppet's master. The old crisis proved that it was not the case that it was not the case. Zoom in on the Watergate scandal. So, in a nutshell, the Watergate scandal began early in the morning of June 17th, 1972, the Gemini period. Anyway, when several burglars were arrested in the office of the Democratic National Committee located in the Watergate complex of buildings in Washington, D.C. This was no ordinary robbery. The prowlers were connected to President Richard Nixon's re-election campaign, and they had been caught wiretapping um, wiretapping? Yes, wiretapping, because there are two P's. Phones and stealing documents. Nixon took aggressive steps to cover up the crimes, but when the Washington Post reporters Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein revealed his role in the conspiracy, Nixon resigned on August 9th, 1974. The Watergate scandal changed American politics forever, leading many Americans to question their leaders and think more critically about the presidency. To learn more about that, watch the movie starring Meryl Streep, but I don't remember the title. I think it's like the Pentagon Papers or something like that. So, three pictures to remember: the oil crisis, the Watergate, and the stagflation. Okay, this is the 70s. So, let's move on to Jimmy Carter. Born in 1929, the guy is still alive, which makes him almost Biden's age, and that's a mean joke. Anyway, the man was a senator, a governor, president, former US Navy man. You see the picture. He was made for the job. But the job wasn't that easy, as it was an crisis year. Then the hostage crisis, then the Panama crisis, then the energy crisis, then the Soviets. Then he was replaced by a guy from Hollywood. Domestic policies, in a nutshell, he pardoned the Vietnam War evaders, and as the Vietnam War was very, very, very not well liked among the Americans, that was nice of him. But he was well known for his energy crisis management. He was sweaties, but not only. He also created the first climate department, well, energy climate department, way before we talked about climate change. But that's only because Total had buried the fights. Anyway, on the other hand, it did not address the domestic crisis. Um, Unemployment remained very high and there was still no growth to be accounted for. The Vietnam War had dug a huge deficit and the VA failed to address the needs of those coming back. The 1979 crisis in Iran did not help Carter. The fact that he gave the Panama Canal back to Panama Though on September 1977, President Carter had also signed a neutrality treaty with Torrijos, I don't know how to pronounce that guy's name, which guaranteed the permanent neutrality of the canal and gave the US the right to use military force if necessary to keep the canal open. This treaty was used as a rationale for the US invasion of Panama, which, so the overthrow of the dictator from Panama, Noriega, who threatened to prematurely seize control of the canal after being indicted in the US on drug charges. Anyway, that's Carter, and I put what he did in a nutshell. Well, the thing is that the energy crisis management, he really tried to do his best. Well, he failed. And then, well, rumor has it that Reagan played on the hostage crisis in Iran for Carter to lose. But the guy was president not at a good time. Okay, so let's focus on Reagan from Hollywood to the Oval Office. So, as I said, rumor has it the Reagan pushed for the crisis in Iran had to be dealt with quickly so that it could move on in the election. So, to be short, a former actor and Californian governor served as the 40th president from 1981 to 1989. He was raised in a small town in Illinois. He became a Hollywood actor in his 20s and later served as the Republican governor of California. He was called the Great Communicator. He became a very popular two-term president. He cut taxes, increased defense spending, negotiated a nuclear arms reduction agreement with the Soviets, and he is credited with helping to bring a quicker end to the Cold War. Reagan, who survived a 1981 assassination attempt, died at age 93 after battling Alzheimer's. So basically, when you think of Reagan, think that The Handmaid's Tale was written during his first term. So it gives you an overview of the guy's value. He was against liberalism, against feminism, against multiculturalism, against central government. He was the heir of the Federalist movement back when America was created. He had capitalized on people's fear and frustration because of Vietnam, because of the counterculture, because of the failure of the Democrat welfare states. If you take a look at his campaign funds, you'll see that the far-right conservative gave a lot, so the new right was fully religious. Many cuts happened in domestic expenditure. Reagan's values were opposed to Johnson's idea of a government this way. His Reaganism was a success, but it did not help the poverty rate, though the richest became wealthier. Basically, Reagan served on the illusion of prosperity, but really damaged the US economy. Does it ring a bell about another president that surfed on growth but did nothing good for the US economy? I'm just saying, both guys came from TV and both guys were seen as, anyway, Republicans. Let's just focus on the word Republicans. Little numbers, key figures. You can compare Carter, Reagan, and Bush for the GDP growth. The unemployment rate, okay, the inflation rate, and the poverty rate. So if you already have key numbers like that, you can wonder, you can be like, the guy did good for the country, but focus on the poverty rate, okay? Well, it remained the same. So basically, in the 10 years of his presidency, well, 8 years because it's twice a term. Well, he did not do anything. Okay. Another thing that you have to keep in mind is that the Democrats dealt with the oil crisis. Reagan came after, and once Iran was the first crisis was behind him, he just dealt with Afghanistan, and in Afghanistan, well, he just created weapons and sold weapons. So basically, that's why there was some growth. Okay, so you have to put things into perspective. And he was against the welfare system. So here again, it's the idea that if you work hard, you can achieve anything. So the people that cannot have a good life, it's their fault. Okay, so that's Reagan, that's the right, that's the Republicans, that's the conservatives. Okay, though he did help to end the Cold War, but by igniting it. Lucky for him, he won. I just wanted to do a little thing on neoliberalism because I don't know if you've heard of it. And I'm not an economics professor, but it feels like it's privatization of things in order to make profits. So I checked with Madame Tracula, and she told me with very complicated words the same thing. But in a nutshell, I say that a lot. In a nutshell, I hate this sentence. Anyway, to be short, so neoliberalism is the idea of putting in competition the economic activity. And when you put things in competition, well, you are forced to lower the prices because you want to make profits. So in a way, you lower the cost, so you use people that you pay less. You put things in other countries because it costs less, and then well, people buy for less. And of course everybody knows that if you've got two things that are basically the same thing, well, you are going to buy the one with the lower price. So neoliberalism is this idea, putting things into competition so that people can make profits. And it's privatization of things, like well, it's the privatization is when big companies buy the supplies of a country. So that's what happened in Iran. That's what happened in Egypt with the Suez Canal. This is what was happening in Panama before it was nationalized. So it's like an opposition between nationalization and privatization. And it's the whole idea of the two ideologies that divided Europe. Um, yeah. I gave you a little chart. I hope that helped you. Don't hesitate to email me if you need anything, and I see you on Wednesday.